everyone, and welcome back to D&D&D&D&D Campaign 2 of Black Ink and Blue Blood. Took a brief hiatus to allow for some DM rest and some player IRL business, but we are back when we last left off. The party of Zephyr, Lucian, and Gil left the Shadow Lily Confederacy city of Perha on a mission from the president to get the bandit kingdom of Tebedra, of which Zephyr hails, to join the burgeoning alliance against the kingdom of Barbarous. Unfortunately, after spending some time in the kingdom, getting to meet Summer, Zephyr's sister, whom Gil is now smitten with, the bandits, predictably, betrayed the party, revealing their own personal alliance with the Kingdom of Barbarous, who, in a show of strength, captured the party, including Zephyr himself, betraying their own personal alliance with the bandits, and are now with the three of you and the Shadow Lily Squire, Pietro, in a dark caravan car, locked in cages, in the darkness, quote unquote, but all of you have dark vision, so I've just already started reflexively not bothering to mention darkness. The caravan car begins to bump as the caravan begins to move. Lucian, after your spell to prevent Pietro's death, after the king very just offhandedly decided to stab the mongrel, the four of you sit in the caravan in silence, accompanied only by the darkness and the dull clanging of the metallic cages as the caravan bumps through the sprintwood. What would you guys like to do?
So I'm just gonna cradle Pi and just put my hand where he was stabbed and just make sure that the spell is doing its job and make sure he's gonna be okay.
You do feel him breathing raggedly, and after a moment, as you feel the energy of your spell taking effect, you hear just kind of of the blade that had been thrown through the bars falling to the wooden.
Oh.
I'm gonna kill that guy myself. Pi, are you alright?
It takes a moment. The breathing still kind of ragged and hesitant and panicked before you feel him nod, but he doesn't respond vocally.
I'm gonna cast Cure Wounds at first level for him. That's a D8 plus 4, so I'll go ahead and roll. Okay, that's 10.
All right, that gets him back up to full. You feel the blood, other than what is already stuck to your hands, beginning to ebb away as the wound is fully closed. And his breathing is still kind of hoarse and ragged, but he is recovered, physically speaking. And he kind of tucks himself, like hugging his knees and pressing himself deeper into you, as if trying to find comfort in the very foreign and uncomfortable caravan cage.
Don't worry, Pi. It's going to be okay. We have a plan.
Lucian's eyes will shift over to Zephyr and narrow very, very coolly at him. So exactly what did you think that you are going to gain from all of this?
Well, money, of course. He's a thief.
Money.
You must be incredibly stupid to have fallen for that.
Hey, wasn't my plan, so.
Well, you went along with it, no?
True.
You have a brain that the gods have given you. You need to use it.
Look, my father made a plan. I went along with it, being a good son.
being a good son would have meant you telling him that it was a really bad idea. That would have been a good son.
Oh yes, it's a bad idea. I had no idea what the plan was or anything of that sort. Just more or
That
less.
is a bunch of bull, okay? Like, we were told by the president that this guy was a douche.
Yes.
Okay? Like, he's a dick. And we already knew this going into it.
Yes.
So why would you think that this guy who is a dick is going to actually, like, let you get away? That's really dumb.
For someone who's insulting me doesn't listen very well. I had no idea much of the plan. All right, I had no idea that we made a deal with them. All I know is we had planned for that letter, and
The letter. There was something bad with the letter?
Yeah, it had a sleeping spell in it.
Zephyr! You are an idiot!
I think we've made the level of his intelligence quite clear.
I mean,
Hmm.
oh my goodness.
Now, I would like to start examining my cage.
All right. Make me a. Yeah, you have dark vision, so make me a perception check. Unless you're looking for something specific, but if you're just looking around, then
Well,
perception.
I'm looking at how to get it open.
Okay. In that case, make me an investigation check.
While he's doing that, did you say that the thing that the king stabbed Pi with is
On the floor.
is in the cage with us now?
Yes. Looking down, you see the blade of a broadsword, but missing a hilt.
Mm.
Oh, this sounds like a good start. 10.
Okay. Taking a moment to examine your cage, you see that your cage, much like the other ones here, are a relatively simple but reliable padlock mechanism. It seems to be double layered with 2 padlocks locking each cage.
So wait, what did you do with the padlock?
He was just looking at them to see how the cages are locked.
All right.
Do we see any like sigils or like runes on the cages to make them like where we
Magical.
can't cast anything? I mean, I guess sparing the dying wouldn't have worked if it wasn't, but I'd
but if
still
you
like
want,
to look.
yeah, make an Arcana check.
Oh, that's a good roll. 19.
All right. Looking around, taking a moment to carefully examine all of the bars of your cage. You do not see or detect any signs of magical tampering or enchantment that would interfere with spellcasting. These seem to be relatively simple cages, like what you would contain an animal with, just on a larger scale. Oh. Right. But yeah, so they seem to be just essentially scaled up versions of the cages you would use to contain a wild animal.
Okay. Looking at the broadsword that doesn't have a hilt. Am I the only one here that has magic?
I have a little bit.
Well,
Pietro slowly shakes his head.
You have one. Yeah. But no,
Well, I kind
zero.
of have an idea, but I don't think I can do it because I don't know it. I was just wondering if anybody could do like heat metal, because like we could melt this down and like make a lockpick.
Zephyr's gonna laugh.
Zephyr, you could pick the lock.
I could. What would that lead us?
out of the cage, a bit more
Oh.
spacious room.
I have a cage, and then what? Then what?
Then we can attack.
Pietro, you feel Pietro's ears flick beneath your chin, and he slowly speaks up. I hate to admit it, but he might have a point. There's a lot of soldiers, and they have guns, and there's 4 of us.
Which is why we're going to wait for them to go to sleep. And break out
They have to eventually.
When they camp for the night.
Well, I mean, there's enough of them to make this trip just one, solid goal.
But not with their horses.
He seems like the kind of guy to push his horse. He's like, crazy. Kind of, like I said before, a dick.
Hmm.
I guess we don't really have a choice but to just sit here and wait.
So with the not the cages, but the cart that we're in. What is this? Is this a solid cart?
Yes, it is a solid wooden on all sides, just box on wheels, essentially. The back of which has a bar lock that you could hear being slung over into place after the king left you here.
Okay, so can we see the little bar? Because I'm imagining we can't see it. Okay, no, but the thing that I'm thinking of is that we're in a cage, we're in a cage in a box, right? So
Yeah.
he said that there was a lever or something that we could hear. Is it on the inside or outside?
It's on the outside. It's one of those you've seen those things where it's you just put a slab of something heavy that's held in place by metal bars, so that if something tries to push from the inside, it just the object just hits the bars and doesn't open. Yeah. But yes, you can see some small bits of sunlight, what can get through the canopy of the sprint wood and then into your caravan car. You can see through some slight light in the door the bar in place, if you just to confirm you can see it.
Okay, so we can't really see outside of it, just patches of light.
Yeah, just from the very occasional small imperfection holes in the lining of the wood and the part where the door closes.
Well, I would like to use my dagger, and I want to pick the lock on my cage.
All right. Make me a general dexterity check with disadvantage, because a dagger is not made to be a lockpick. All right.
I just wanted to point out, it says your character's name is Suchul Rune.
Oh yeah, I think you might have the wrong character selected.
Oh, you have Skull Run.
No, it says Skull. Oh.
You're not Skull Run.
Yeah, it's like Skull Run. It's like it says Skull. That's the point.
Yeah, you're Gil on this one. You have to update it.
How do I do that?
No, it's not update. It's just you have to select character. Yeah. I believe it's.
Are you exclamation point?
Care. You can do care and then the person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Exclamation point care then the person you want. I was I noticed that earlier. I was like, that mage person, man. The new goal.
Okay. There you go.
But either way,
No, you have to do it on your own.
well, the thing is my dexterity is only one above that, so it's still going to be a 24 and a 20 because my dexterity is a +5.
Okay. So it takes some effort, but finally, with a you manage to unlock one of the two padlocks securing your cage.
And I'm going to go after the other one.
Just
All right.
wait a minute. Don't do that quite yet.
Hey,
Can you?
I'm a big guy here. I need room to move.
Okay, listen. I understand that you're a big guy. Okay, maybe like a little too big in the head, But like, here's the thing. I unfortunately agree with Zephyr that if we just get out of here, there's too many of them and not enough of us. So we have to be like, what is the word? Smart. So I'm just gonna curl up here I'm just gonna like curl up in a little ball with Pi and just like stroke his hair and just like it's going to be okay.
And then I was still going to tackle the other log.
All right. Same check as before. While you're doing that, Zephyr, what are you doing?
Zephyr's just gonna sit there in the corner, do nothing.
While Lucian is holding Pietro, Pietro kind of shuffles his head a bit and speaks, directing his attention to you, Zephyr, and says, "Do you have any idea where they're taking us?"
Not a clue. I'm gonna guess.
I would assume. Yeah, I would assume his kingdom, because I mean, that's what we were, sent out to do, was to, Unfortunately, we were supposed to get your father and the rest of the bandits, but we.
Our goal was to deliver a letter.
Too frustrated to
We
speak.
did.
No, we're not dead. Don't say that.
I never said we were dead. So our goal was to deliver a letter, and we did.
I honestly thought that the goal was to get an answer from said letter. That was my impression.
Well, I don't know about you, but it seems like a good enough answer to me.
He's got a boy.
Gil, you take the dagger to the second padlock and you start repeating the same process you did before, but you start putting all your weight and you're just struggling to get the second one loose. And after a moment, you pull your dagger out and see that the tip has started to kind of bend and loosen a bit from the effort expended on it. It won't actually like debuff it, but just one of your daggers is now slightly bent at the tip.
Now that to fix that, we're great.
Just hammer it out. It'll be fine.
Gil's gonna glare over at her and be like, "Oh, be quiet."
She's just gonna raise her eyebrows.
And he's gonna go at the lock again.
So I'm not with just one idiot. I'm with two idiots. I mean, I already know that Gil was an idiot, but you really showed yourself there, Zephyr.
Hey, I'm not the one who followed me through all this, so.
We are a team, Zephyr.
Team?
I would have followed you anyways, because we are a team. We've been a team since the very beginning, and you're not being very like team-like.
Well, we work together. I don't know about a team though.
That is the same thing.
Question.
Yeah, maybe for you, but not everything is just, gray areas. It's either black or white for some people.
Again,
Like,
we
you
work
are
together.
way too gray area for me.
We had our job. We had a job together. I don't know about a team. A team I would trust. And
Okay, but it doesn't even seem like you really trust anyone. You don't even like show emotion to your own family. So like I really question your views of trust.
my views of trust. Frankly, you're right. I don't trust y'all. My family's in a gray area.
Clearly, clearly your family cannot be trusted.
Well, my
Clear.
family. I could trust my family. It's just like you mentioned, not their judgment.
Summer's trustworthy.
Oh, be quiet, you.
And I remember what you said, Matt. Yes. Well, did they make a bad choice? Probably. But
Probably. Look where you are.
and
What do you mean, and? We're probably going to die.
well, maybe for you.
Yeah, he won't kill us.
No, not yet, but he'll probably torture us or make an example out of us.
You feel Pietro in your grip start to shiver.
I
He
mean,
just like holds him tighter. I'm sorry, I did not mean to scare you, but I need to look at the facts.
Which is why we have to escape.
But we can't. We're still moving, which means that they're not stopping to rest anytime soon.
You don't know that.
So it'd just be stupid to bust out of here. Like, that's just sending us already to our graves. And there's 2 people here that are not made for fighting. I mean, I love you, Pi, but you are not ready to fight.
Pietro just kind of nods slowly. And you can hear him kind of mumble to himself, just looking at the facts.
And, I mean, Zephyr's just a little lizard boy, so he's not like he can fight. So it's you and me against how many guards and the giant king Dick?
We can take him.
No.
Oh, really? So why didn't you take him before?
You are from... Where are you from?
Somewhere that's not surrounded by idiots.
No. Where are you from?
Hey, Matt, where am I from?
You are from the Gyogre territories.
Yeah, there.
Yeah.
Okay, does Lillian know about those people?
Yes, the Wicked Commonwealth is a close ally of the Gyogre territories. You can make a history check if you want more detail, but your people have had a long-standing alliance with them. They are a somewhat isolated stratocracy of elves that live on an island off the coast of Yav. They, again, mostly keep to themselves, but you do know that they are purveyors of advanced military strategy and technology.
So she's gonna turn back to Gil. You are from a military country.
Yeah.
Okay, what would your military do? I mean, it's just 2 people against we don't know how many.
Well,
That's an extreme disadvantage. Do you not think so?
What we would do, we would use our small numbers to a great advantage.
How?
We wait till dark, we bust out, then we start picking them off from the rear of their campaign while they're still moving.
Okay, no. That does not seem very strategic to me. Okay, that just seems like swing in and hope for the best kind of thing.
What was that? Or I could try to blend into their ranks after killing them.
I think I need to go talk to your
Hmm.
father after this. Is what I think. I'm very worried about you, getting the throne when you're older. Because if this is how you want to fight, I don't want to see how you run a country.
I can run a country just fine.
No, I wouldn't. I would disadvise everybody in Wicked to not be with your country if you are there, because I don't trust you, and I think that you are dumb.
Oh.
Gil, as you're like processing that, you feel a harsh snap from the dagger you're using to pick the lock, and the blade has finally just given way and broken entirely with no progress on the lock.
That Lucian just gestures like, "Told you so."
Wonderful. And I'll just throw in the like I'll take the dagger hilt. Like how much blade is still there?
The tip that had previously been bending had finally just given way. So it's basically knife all the way up until like about an inch off the top.
Okay, I'll resheath it and pull out a second one.
Keep going at it.
Pretty much.
See, Pai, this is what that we have to deal with.
And unfortunately, you are, as you start going in to continue picking the lock, the other, like the remaining metal from your dagger is lodged in the lock.
It's probably in here.
You're stuck in it now. That's funny.
Well, crap.
Mm-hmm.
So, time passes. The sunlight that makes it into the caravan car begins to darken into the red light colors of sunset, and finally, night falls. The caravan continues to trundle with no signs of stopping. However, you do hear the caravan still moving. You hear the bar lock being lifted off of its holsters of sorts. And the free from their confinement, the caravan door swings open to reveal a tall human male donned in steel armor with a fairly handsome face, but his nose and eyes and just general facial region is slightly crooked and uncentered, as if someone had punched him incredibly hard recently. And while the internal parts had healed, his structure was never quite the same. You see beneath his dark brown and well-kept hair a fairly deepening tan. You get the impression this man is in sunlight frequently. And in his arms are several what appear to be well-made but somewhat improvised bags, satchels almost. And while you can't see what is in them, all of you can smell food. And the man is walking, kind of jogging to keep up with the caravan that still has not stopped. And after a moment, hops into the caravan and turns around and waves a hand. And the caravan doors shut and the bar lock is refitted, the caravan continuing to move this whole time. The man turns and looks around the room before approaching your cage, Lucian, and holding out the two satchels of food, and says, "All right, time for dinner and time to give you a more proper patting down."
Just gonna give him quite the incredulous look. Really now.
You
You're
see,
going to pat down a lady?
you see a very bright blush overtake his face, and he kind of sputters a bit before he almost drops one of the satchels, but kind of corrects his grip and says, "We can have some of the women of the camp attend to that. I just need your cooperation, my lady."
Mm.
She's just gonna raise a single eyebrow and give a little smirk. And before we do any cooperating, why don't you tell us where we're going?
You see the man raise his own eyebrow, seeming genuinely surprised, and he looks to all of you. Were you not informed before being placed in? And he kind of gestures to the cages.
We're in captivity. You can say it.
He kind of raises a fist to his mouth and kind of clears his throat awkwardly before placing his arms behind his back in a very formal gesture and speaks. Under the custody of the colony of Barbarous, you are being taken to the city of Roseate, specifically Fort Antimony, where Dr. Dinah Knight will be attending to you.
But then, there is nothing, wrong with me. I mean, maybe these two need to be checked out, but I'm fine.
He kind of awkwardly pulls out his collar and says, "I'm afraid this is something a bit different than a routine checkup, but the specifics
They're
are..."
going to experiment on us to see why we are not human and what our DNA is like.
One of those guys. I wonder if he was a friend. Does that doctor sound familiar to me? Like he might have been a friend to my father?
Make a history check.
Natural 20!
All right. You do recognize the name. Not in association with your family, though. You have heard stories of a famous world-traveling chemist by the name of Dinah Knight. She is what is known as a Tengu, a half-bird, half-goblin creature. And living with her people, she discovered the art of chemistry, specifically a special powder that can make things explode. She has been recruited by various people for various agendas to supply this technology to them, but her true passion is in medicine. However, you are aware this is a controversy that swept through the more scientifically minded groups of your family the day that Dr. Knight became an oathbreaker.
Ooh.
An oathbreaker is... make me a religion check real quick. And I'll say with advantage because you got a nat 20 on the history that's connected to it. I probably won't need it, but... yeah, okay.
18.
You know, an oathbreaker is a doctor who has forsaken their oath and instead sworn fealty to a deity known only as the Plague Doctor, a deity that gives disease rather than cures it. The oathbreakers have their own fundamental personal reasons for doing these things, and no one knows what reason Dr. Knight personally has for doing so, but the discovering this got her banned from all scientifically and medically minded communities. Only the most desperate taking her services in the hopes that she will forsake the breaking of her oath just that once to perform some actual medicine. Because she works for cheap and she's an experimental thinker. However, she has never been to this region before. You've only heard about her as hearsay from overseas. So her being here is genuinely surprising.
Okay.
So, what is the likelihood that we will survive this doctor?
Not likely. I mean, my father was very experimental, but this person is like 20 times that. I mean, my father was a little crazy, but like this is like crazy, you know? I'm actually kind of glad that my father never met this person. Little glad about that. But this Oathbreaker, I'm concerned about this, and this is off the command of your. And she's gonna say it in a very condescending way. King.
He gives a nod, still maintaining his respectful posture, but maintaining his grip on the satchels of food, and gives a nod of the head. Indeed, the governor has requested that me and my troops escort you to Fort Antimony, where the doctor will conduct research upon you.
So tell me, who messed up your face?
That's not very nice. I'm sorry about him. He's not very
Zip it.
smart.
Mm.
No, you zip it. Listen, mister. What is your name?
He smiles, seeming genuinely polite, and holds the satchels in his other hand so that he can extend his free one towards you. Lieutenant Vernon.
Lieutenant. She's gonna give him her hand and expecting him to kiss her hand. My name is Lucian. I'm sure you know who I am.
While she does this, can I sleight of hand and steal the food?
He's a bit far from your cage at the moment, but
Don't worry, I'm getting to it.
I'll tell you what. You go ahead and make me the check, but we'll see what happens.
All right. Roll. That'll be a dirty 20.
All right. So I'll keep that in mind. Again, he's too far from you right now. So,
Yeah.
okay. And he smiles and shakes your hand, but very noticeably does not kiss the ring.
She's gonna give a forced smile. And are the rest of your men as handsome as you? Are there many of you?
That's seduce.
He blushes again, but kind of clears his throat and shakes his head and says, I'm afraid there's not much time for small talk. I'm here on business and business first. And you see he's kind of starting to sputter. Like, he seems like a man who's very unaccustomed to the attention you're giving him.
I mean, come on, Lieutenant. Just between you and me. She's gonna give him a little flirty smile.
Make me a persuasion check.
It's okay. It's 11.
Do me a this won't it's not like a consequence or anything. Just make me an insight check as well.
10.
10.
You see he seems kind of starting to kind of give way to his flusteredness, but you see him kind of glance you over and shake his head to kind of clear his thoughts before stepping back a bit and turning to you, Gil, and kind of looks you over before saying, all right, you first. We'll give you a search, and you'll be left with the food in your cell.
Okay, what kind of search?
He turns back to the doors and gives another, and you hear the bar lock being lifted before 4 soldiers, still armed, but with their rifles slung over their shoulders. Hop onto the still moving caravan car, and the door is shut and the bar closed again. And he gestures to the troops and says, my men will give you and your cohorts pat down, search you for weapons, tools, and equipment, anything that is now the property of Barbarous, and you will be returned to your cell with your food.
He's going to give him kind of like a hard look. You will not touch me.
Quick question.
What's up?
How battle hardened do these guys look?
Make me an insight check.
Close quarter combat. Ooh, natural one.
They're all pretty stone-faced, and I believe in dark, because of your dark vision, you can't like make out like color and details. So it's very hard to tell without making it blatantly obvious that you're like scanning them. So from what you can gather, it's hard to tell. Like they're definitely armed to the teeth, but you can't tell at a glance like how ready for battle they are. And to you, Lucian, the lieutenant coughs again and says, "I will keep my word. One of the camp's cooks will see to you."
And it's dark, right?
Yes, there is some light coming through imperfections in the wood and the crack in the door, but that's about it.
I am going to get on my knees, preparing to get out of the cage for the pat down. And then I'm going to Misty Step behind the guards.
Oh yeah, you could have just done that the entire time. I forgot about y'all could do that.
And then I'm going to grab the back guard, dagger to throat, and
All right,
see how others react.
Make me a grapple check because these guys were already ready. So
In that same instant, is the lieutenant still close to me?
no, he was at Gil's cage, which is across the caravan from you.
Okay, I won't move then.
And what do I roll for grapple?
You will roll. You'll roll an athletics check, but the enemy can choose acrobatics instead if they prefer.
Yeah,
So
it's a contestant.
okay. You guys watch as Gil gets on his knees and the lieutenant gives a nod. "We appreciate your cooperation," and unlocks the first padlock and goes to unlock the second one and seems kind of confused when the lock doesn't give into the key. Give me just a moment. He starts to kind of look at it, and you start to get nervous that he might notice the broken piece of dagger, but he just kind of shrugs after a moment and kind of gestures for you to step back a bit. "Hold on, won't take but a moment." And he pulls a small pistol from his belt and levels it at the padlock and fires. The whole Lucian, you could feel Pietro's ears like immediately flatten from the bang as the padlock just shatters, and you guys in the other cells can hear a few pieces of shrapnel like hit the walls of the cell around you, and he just kind of dismissively like knocks the remains of the padlock off of the cell and opens it. You're still gonna Misty Step and grab, Gil?
Yep.
All right. You Misty Step behind the guards, and the guard reacts as you're doing it, but you do manage to get and maintain a grip on him. And the three other soldiers immediately level their bayoneted rifles, the lieutenant drawing a saber, but holding up a hand, clearly like trying to make sure his troops maintain their cool.
Drop your weapons, or your compatriot dies.
The lieutenant drops his hand and just kind of gives that like frown of like, "Really, dude?" Like almost disappointed in you.
You really thought I was gonna let someone experiment on me?
The lieutenant shrugs and says, "Well, I suppose we should have expected this, but would have thought even a savage could do basic math." "Very well."
I'm
Men,
not going to just
weapons
go
down.
quietly.
Good.
Now,
This is good.
take all your weapons, put them in the far corner.
You see the soldiers kind of looking at each other. Make me an insight check.
Oh. Oh.
You're focused, so it's hard to make out expressions, but they do as they're told. Put rifles and slings of extra ammunition in the corner. The lieutenant simply crossing his arms behind his back and just kind of raising an eyebrow at you expectantly. Very well, master strategist. Freedom is just outside that door.
Yeah, except it's not. No, is it?
Uh,
How many other cages are there?
in the caravan with you, or are you asking him in dialogue?
I don't know. How many do I see?
Okay, make me a perception check, because some of them are kind of stacked on top of each other, so it can be hard at a glance to make out an immediate number. In the caravan, counting the ones you and your party are contained in, you can see a grand total of about. At a glance, it looks like somewhere in the vicinity of like 13 to 20 cages in total. Again, some are stacked and smaller or larger than others, so it's not really super organized, but it's somewhere in the vicinity of like about 15-ish, roughly.
Okay. Oh, you all get in the cages.
The lieutenant shrugs and says, "Very well. You heard the free man, troops." And the soldiers begin to file in, the lieutenant following, calm as can be.
So, then, do I see any extra locks?
Just kind of lying around.
Yeah. If they got cages, they got extra locks.
Yes.
Oh.
Sorry, got a Discord call on my end.
Yeah.
Make me an investigation check.
Wait.
You do just kind of thrown haphazardly on top of one of the smaller cages across from Zephyr. You see a small pile of locks and the keys that go to them. And I will say, as a side note, Zephyr, while the lieutenant was filing past you toward the cages, you do manage to swipe one of these stacks of food.
Hey.
So, once those guys are all in the cages, I will take the guy that I'm still holding and have him lock all the cages.
All right. Make me a persuasion check. Or, this would be intimidation. Make me an intimidation check. He's initially stubbornly fighting against you, but after a reminder of the unforgiving piece of metal to his throat, he kind of spits, and you can hear him mutter about savage elves before doing as told.
Then, once those are all locked, I'm going to go to each of the cages. Well, first I'll put him in another cage.
Yeah, like...
and then lock it. And then after he's in the cage is locked, I'm going to knock him out with the butt of my knife. And repeat that to all the other guards.
Hit him through the cage.
As you kind of approach the cages, yes, it is as Zephyr stages. The cages, even the small ones, are large enough to at least allow them some wiggle room, and they are all currently in varying states of collected. It was mostly the guy you were holding, who seems kind of stubborn and fighting, lean towards the back. So you will have to either open the cage to reach them or get something with longer reach.
Because I still have all my gear.
Yes, yeah, that's why they were sending the lieutenant in to basically strip you guys down, more or less.
Yes, so we.
I'm going to pull out my javelin.
Okay,
And
just
I'm going to
stab
hit them all with the butt of my javelin.
and
knocking
just
them out.
stab them.
No, I'm not going to stab them, but I'm going to knock them out with the end of it. It gives me plenty of reach.
Sorry, hit a button mistake. So do you want to start with the troops and then go work your way to the lieutenant, or start with the lieutenant and go through the troops?
Lieutenant first.
Okay. Make me an attack roll.
I would like to cast Bless for him. So you get a +4 on your thing. Nice.
That's a 20.
Okay.
Oh, actually, not +4. You roll D4.
Oh, I roll a D4.
Yeah, and then add that
Okay.
to your modifier. That's what it is.
Okay.
So
So shall I re-roll that then?
Yes.
And
As
you
you-
add a D4 and has D4 as well. Oh, so 13.
Okay. As you just jab in with your javelin, basically just trying to poke him to death, or to unconsciousness anyway. The lieutenant grabs the end of the javelin before it reaches him and just holds with an unyielding grip. And as he starts to move it to the side so that it's not pointed towards his torso, he just kind of raises an eyebrow to you and says, "I do believe this charade has gone on long enough. How far exactly do you think you're going to get?"
Hopefully far enough.
He kind of lulls his head a bit and says, "We have a veritable platoon escorting this caravan of very imperative to the kingdom prisoners to a place not very far from here, and the king, a very accomplished warrior himself, is still among our number. So I ask you again, whenever you valiantly knock us all out and set free you and your savage friends, what's step two?"
Yeah. Zephyr wasn't going to do anything, so.
This hasn't done anything either.
Well, when he does that, my shape is going to shift. And this guy is going to be looking at a replication of himself.
All right. He just kind of hums, "Parlor tricks."
Ineffective.
He kind of rolls his eyes and sighs a bit and says, I was truly, truly hoping that we could do this the easy way." And he kind of thinks to himself for a moment. "I had wanted to believe that perhaps the governor was a bit too harsh in his dealings with your people, but I suppose you've proven the point quite effectively."
And what point is that?
He leans forward and speaks with a very clear and not necessarily vicious per se, but like the statement of someone just stating a blunt fact that they know the other person doesn't want to hear. "That you and your people, 2-1, are stupid, uneducated savages and was civilizing you barbarians.
Oh.
Gil's going to nod. Yeah. How far forward did he lean?
Just like a foot or two.
Enough that, should I wish, reach in and grab the front?
You'd have to be fast so that he can't react, but yeah.
I want to do that, and I'm gonna yank him up close and smack his head onto the bars.
Okay. Make me a grapple check, but if you manage to beat him, I'll allow you to do that since he's, kind of at your mercy more or less. So. You manage to grab him, and all of you in the other cages kind of wince a bit as you hear the sound of bone on metal, and the lieutenant falls silent.
Ah, that's better. And then I'll take my spear or javelin and go into the next cage
Oh.
and say, so this could be really, really quick, or we can prolong this like we did with the lieutenant. And then jab at them.
Okay. For the sake of brevity, you managed to knock out the other soldiers. They all basically like make their stance with their lieutenant clear, and only the last one puts up a direct resistance, but you managed to get through them, just to save us the rigmarole of you like standing in front of the cage for like a half hour making dice rolls and jabs. And after a moment, the lieutenant and his soldiers are unconscious in the cages.
I will then let Lucian and Pi out, and then stand in front of Zephyr's.
Do you
So-
need something?
Why shouldn't we just leave you here?
I mean, frankly, if you open the cage, I would stay here.
Oh, then I have no problem leaving you here in the woods alone. by
Lucian, you feel Pietro's wing hand clutch your arm as you move, and you see his ears flicking side to side a bit, and you can feel his throat kind of like maneuvering as if he's like almost channeling something from deep within, and you hear him whisper, "Outside! They're outside!"
And that is why.
Lucian nods. How many do you hear?
He pauses for a moment. You see his ears flick in like every direction as if he's like tracing the caravan. And he whispers, Lucian is the only one able to hear this immediately, unless the other two make perception checks. And he says, 7. 2 more went to get the king.
Lucian's gonna look at Gil. I've only got a little bit of magic left. What do you think that we should do now, since you're apparently the one in charge?
Well, did you want them touching you?
No,
Well, and did you want to be experimented on?
nothing I haven't endured before.
Well, unlike you, I have not and will not.
She kind of adjusts herself and tries to hold herself in the usual confident way that she does. Well, there are 10 of them And how many of us? Can you count?
Yes, I can count.
And I've got 2
One.
spell
Yeah.
slots left.
Zephyr counts for you. 1, 2.
Zephyr.
Well, we already took out 5. Well, let me put that more clearly. I already took out 5.
Dumb luck.
You took out 5 without. Well, they took no resistance.
Like I said, dumb luck. Look, I can do 2 things for magic. That's it. And maybe I can swing my sword. But I'm not very good with it. Not all of us have been trained in combat, Gil.
Well, we don't really have much choice.
Do you still, Jeremy, do you still look like the lieutenant?
Yep.
Okay. Lucian looks like she's thinking something.
Oh, can I hear?
Yeah. Hang on, I'm formulating a plan. Okay.
I'll just note real quick. You see Pietro's ears starting to trace slowly the outer side of the caravan, like as if following something heading towards the door.
Oh.
Okay. So when he opens the door, I can try either lunging at him and touching him, doesn't matter where, or I can misty step and then touch him. But that will take away both of my spells.
Well, no, I think Misty Steps by itself. It's a feature, I think.
Yeah, Misty Step is one of your bonus traits.
Oh, okay.
It's a feature thing, so you can use it by itself.
Oh, really? Okay, so then I have 3 spells then, because I thought it was a thing.
No, you're an elf.
Oh.
You're only allowed to do it once per short rest.
Okay.
Zephyr, make me a perception check.
Hey, I'm decent at that. Perception. Let's see. Natural 20.
Oh, nice. Zephyr, while you two are arguing, Zephyr, your ears twitch a bit, and you hear footsteps and the sound of unsheathing metal, and you instinctively just move away from the wall of the caravan as the blade of a sword pierces it like a magician stabbing the box, and as the blade is slowly yanked out, and you can hear the serrated edges knocking more splinters and pieces of wood loose, leaving you with a small, like almost perfectly finger-sized hole in the walls of your cell. You see the figure of King Barbarous, almost just kind of casually swinging the sword in front of him as he walks past the hole, and you can hear him chuckle to himself before doing the same to Gil's, where Gil's cell was.
Yep. I can't remember. Did I put someone in that cage?
No, you put him in separate cages, I believe.
Okay, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure
plus
I
that one-
didn't put one of his men into that one.
That one got blown up with the lock. So
And finally, you see the blade, and you can hear the bar locking the caravan car split in twain as a blade pierces between the crack of the door. And you hear the voice of King Barbarous speak up. All right, savages, you in there?
No.
no. Oh, okay. I'll come back
That's
later.
funny. And you see the blade get slowly, that same loving delicacy as it gets pulled back outside. And after a moment, Gil, you distinctly can hear and recognize the sounds of rifle hammers being pulled back as he says, all right, this ought to be a good story. Lieutenant with a whole bodyguard regiment walks in, and you guys somehow think you're going to walk out.
That's not really that far-fetched.
You can't see him, but you can almost hear the kind of sneering, twisted, greasy smile on his face as you can hear him step back a bit and say, I suppose that's fair enough. So this is how we're going to do things. You drop everything, and whenever my lovely lieutenant, and you see the blade pierce one of the doors again, decides that he's done napping, we'll collect your belongings, and if you're lucky, we'll throw them in the treasure cart. Or
she's gonna interrupt him. Can she see him through the little finger hole?
Make a perception check. You cannot see him, but you can see several uniformed soldiers keeping their rifles leveled at the door.
She's gonna say, or, and then she's gonna misty step behind one of the soldiers that she can see.
Oh, wait,
then she's gonna look at him and cast. Shit. I'm gonna start having a panic attack. She's gonna cast Create Water. And she is going to try to fill his lungs with water.
All right. Let me double check just to see if there's any thing for that. Oh, what am I doing? Create water. I will give you props for creativity.
Thank you.
Can go and arrange in an open container. Okay. I'll say, just because this isn't really a precedented use of the spell, I'll say make me an Arcana check.
Okay.
See if you can accomplish something that fine-tuned.
Okay. 30-20.
All right. You raise your hand and cast the spell. And you watch as the king, and now that you're outside, you kind of blink in the kind of silvery green moonlight, and you see that the king is actually dressed in a very relaxed and casual robe, almost as if you had caught him midway through a shower, so he just kind of quickly made himself presentable and stepped out. And you watch as he plants the blade of his sword in the ground for support as he starts, quite literally drowning on dry land.
And then she's gonna look around at the people. Drop your weapons now.
Make me an intimidation check with disadvantage because they do have you outnumbered.
I would take advantage because I am drowning their king.
Are you though?
Okay. Okay. 17.
They step, with the exception of the one you have. Did you grapple the guy you teleported
No.
behind, or just okay? They keep their rifles. They turn their rifles to you, and they don't drop them, but they do start kind of stepping back, kind of looking between you and the king. Uh, uh, and they do seem intimidated, but they're not quite sure what to do, whether to follow your instructions or risk the king's ire should he survive this.
At this point, I would like to basically put my foot through the door and try to break out.
Okay. I mean, yeah, like he already broke the bar lock, so that's easy enough to do. You kick the door open with a dramatic flourish, and you see 9 soldiers with bayoneted rifles leveled at Lucien. And they're currently kind of stepping back towards the king, who's currently just coughing and vomiting water into the grass and dirt at his feet.
I'm going to take the king's sword from him.
All right.
Oh,
Make me a grapple check, and I'm going to say with disadvantage because he has a very tight grip on it because he's using it for support while he hacks his lungs out.
also, aren't we moving? Jump on him.
The caravan came to a stop whenever the king, basically whenever the king entered the frame, so to speak.
Okay, that's a 13. Since I have disadvantage.
Yeah.
Breathing. Unlike the king.
Okay. You are unfortunately unable to pry the sword away from him. And you see his fist immediately just almost reflexively swing around. What's your AC, just to save us time?
19.
Okay. Where's that dice? There you are.
That's what you want to hear. Where's that dice?
Yeah. Yeah, add that to the dictionary of good DM. I should really start making like an actual list of just things you don't want your DM to say.
Right.
Gil, you managed to dodge out of the way of the first punch, but the hand that was grabbing the sword grabs you by the collar and basically pulls you into the fist twice, and you take in total 7 bludgeoning damage.
So after this, I will then take my great sword, level it at his throat, look at his men, and say, "Well, that was pleasant. Now do as the girl ask."
Several of them turn to level their rifles at you instead. Make me an intimidation check. This one just does a straight roll.
18.
You see them kind of starting to get nervous and look at each other. And finally, one of them pipes up, pointing to you, Lucien, and speaks to you, Gil, despite pointing to Lucien, and says, "Have a call off of witchcraft."
I have no control over her.
He levels his rifle at you. Like hell, you don't.
So you're going to be the brave one that dies first, huh? Intimidating again.
Sure.
Oof, 30-20.
He kind of looks to his comrades, looks to the king, who, Lucian, to your shock, actually seems to be recovering. There's a pile of like freshly wettened grass with some compost at his feet, but otherwise he actually seems to have survived that. But he's still like hacking and coughing. And eventually the soldier who had spoken does not put down his rifle, but slowly lowers it so that the butt of it is against the ground. And after a moment, his soldiers, or rather the other soldiers, take a step back from all of you, kind of forming a cavalry square a bit as they go to do the same.
Now, you're going to let us have your horses, and you are going to let us go, or I will fill his lungs again with water. But this time, more.
Is that dialogue, or is that just something you're doing?
That's dialogue.
Okay.
Spell.
They kind of look to each other. I'll say make me one last intimidation check, this time with advantage.
Oof, 14 and... Oof, natural 1. 14. Luckily we had advantage.
I'm not very used to intimidating people.
I'll say make me a quick deception check. Because I believe you are lying when you say that you can fill his lungs with water again. I believe that's a first level spell, and I think you're out of spell slots now.
You can use it. You can use it at a higher level as well.
Yeah. So do you have any spell slots left?
She has 2 level 2 spells, so it's just what she's saying. She can even
okay,
more
then
water.
Never mind. Scratch that deception check.
Uses even more water.
Okay.
That's why I said I could do more.
I just wasn't sure if you were just saying that to intimidate them or if you actually could.
That means I'm good. So I'm just saying.
You see, he kind of swallows a bit, and you see him noticeably give a glance at the king, who's kind of pulling himself to his feet, and the soldier kind of winces a bit.
No. I still have my sword on the king. He's not getting
Oh, you can see as he starts to recover, he looks you dead in the eye and moves to stand up anyway.
I'm gonna press that sword right into his throat.
Okay.
To the point where I'm gonna
are you attacking him or just trying to keep him from moving?
Keeping him from moving. I will
right.
physically draw blood at that point if I have to.
Oh yeah, that's why I'm asking, because basically, unless you use it to scare him, which would be an intimidation check again, a lot of intimidation this session, he is going to try and stand up regardless of whether the sword stabs him or not.
He's not afraid.
Notice that the sword's going to go right through his throat.
So it's an attack, basically, what they say.
All right, make me an attack roll.
Yeah. Ooh.
As the king kind of looks up at you, still like kind of drooling, very meaty slobber from his near drowning. Also, as a quick side note on that, for the reasoning for that, just so no one at home thinks I'm trying to railroad here, there is an in-game mechanic regarding drowning. Since this little maneuver here is essentially making someone drown on dry land, it was essentially a contest against the king's constitution whether he would drown like before he could, in theory, like vomit all the water out. I just don't want you to think that I'm just like saying, no, he lives because I made that character, you know?
That would be a very overpowered spell if that just straight killed him.
One more time, sorry?
That would be a pretty overpowered spell if you just you're dead because you drowned.
Yeah.
First level spell, drowned.
10 whole gallons he had to throw up.
No, like I said, it's bad.
It makes it into a 30-foot cone. Something like that.
That's like a lot of freaking water.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, he was basically sitting there vomiting for like a solid 5 minutes while you guys like psychologically tortured his troops. So I think that's fair.
Yeah.
So Gil, he looks up at you as he just slobbers basically, and in this lightning fast motion moves, and you can actually feel your blade like slice down his arm, like trailing blood into the grass as he stands to I believe it was mentioned last session that he is like very slightly taller than you, or about the same height.
He's tall.
About the same height.
Yeah, stands to be eye level with you, with blood just trailing down his arm, and grips the hilt of his sword, and he just kind of stares at you, staring down at you emotionally. Looks to Lucian, and after a moment, he kind of taps his, like, he does that thing of kind of loosening his grip on the sword just enough to kind of tap it side to side in his palm, before saying, "You know, the doctor gets very upset with me for turning in corpses instead of specimens." He nods to his troops, who immediately just practically throw their rifles into the dirt. As the king steps back, blood still trailing from his fingers into the grass, as he nods to the caravan. "Take your mongrel friends, take the horses, and away with you. But we'll be back, and
Okay.
I'll be sure to get a doctor's note that I can finish you off next time."
Oh, I wouldn't have it any other way.
He shrugs and says, "Such is the way with barbarians. Begone!"
At that
Grab
point,
pie.
I want to keep my sword raised, poised to it, like in defense, and say, "Lucian, get Zephyr."
I grab Pie and I grab Zephyr by the scruff.
Grab me?
Yeah, by the scruff.
I can test. I mean,
How do we do this?
you have to grapple.
This would be grapple, so.
Yeah, so you do.
So you do athletics, and Zephyr can do acrobatics if he prefers.
Well, I have a -2 to athletics, so acrobatics.
So I imagine acrobatics is your preference.
It's a 17.
Ooh, I got a 16.
All right, Zephyr, you put up a valiant fight, but you're in a cramped space, and Lucia manages to get just enough of a grip on you to pull you out.
All right, I stab her.
All right, make an attack roll. Is this it? Is this where the party finally kills each other?
Ooh, not really, because I got a 10.
I imagine that doesn't make. All right, so Lucian, you hear the sound of a dagger being unsheathed, and instinctively, like, suck in your gut as a dagger like hits where the side of your stomach had been just a moment before, and Pietro immediately like pushes off of you to like stumble backwards, falling straight on his ass, as you see Zephyr has pulled a knife.
Okay, you three, get on the horses.
I'm going to drop Zephyr and pick up Pie, and I'm going to look down at Zephyr. You are on your own from now on. I do not care for you. I do not care about you. You don't want my help? Fine. And then she's going to get on the horse with Pie.
I'm going to wait for Zephyr to get on the horse as well.
I mean,
okay. Zephyr, what are you doing?
I see them going to get on the horse. I walk into the horse.
Oh no! He's not going anywhere. As he starts to go by, I'm going to grab him myself.
It's not worth it.
It is to me.
Wow. I want to
Okay.
leave before the
And-
king changes his mind.
Actually, I mean, I'm
And
a
I'm going to forcibly take Zephyr and then jump on a horse and
well, you grapple
Get the hell
check
out of
first. You have to grapple me.
I was gonna say, do you want to contest this? You
Well,
see
yeah.
what I've been rolling before.
Oh yeah, I'm grappling. You'll probably win. I'm not doubting that. Ooh, unless I get a dirty 20.
You got a natural
Oh
20.
shit!
Dang.
You got a natural 20.
Yeah, I got a dirty 20.
All right. Zephyr, once again, a very valiant effort. If it had been anyone else, you would have gotten away. But Gil manages to snag you, and basically, like Frodo with the elf woman from Lord of the Rings, kind of just like makes a little spot for you on the horse, so that you're kind of between him and freedom, or rather, he's between you and freedom, and starts to get the horse moving to follow Lucian.
All right.
And as you go, you see the king, who has just been like cackling as this all plays out. You can see he looks straight at you, Zephyr, and says, "Hey, easy on the merchandise, kid."
I'm gonna shout to him, "No promises."
You see he kind of tilts his head to the side, and there's a brief second of confusion before he breaks out in a broad smile and just kind of claps slowly before drawing his sword and hopping into the caravan car that you guys had previously been in, and you ride the horses away.
All right.
So, where are you guys going?
Well, as we're riding, I want to stab
Oh, no.
Gil.
No.
I'm gonna try to stab
we're-
Gil.
No, once we're at a distance, if he tries to stab me, I'm knocking his ass out.
All right. Well, I'm trying to stab you, so.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
he's still in character, so.
You go ahead.
All right. Ooh, another. Oh no, that's a 22.
Believe that beats your AC.
Okay.
All right, roll for damage. My good kobold. My bad kobold. My kobold.
All right, give him a little dagger touch, which isn't very much damage. Oof, you take 4 damage.
Sorry, I was drinking.
Yeah.
Gil, as you're focused on keeping your mount moving, you feel some slight shuffling, but you just kind of initially chalk it up to the movements of a passenger riding without a good grip on the reins, and then you feel that hot flash of pain and cold metal as Zephyr manages to plant a knife into your stomach.
When he does this, it's really gonna hurt. But I'm just going to take my other hand. I'm just going to smack him in the head.
All right,
and
make
knock
it
his
an unarmed
ass
attack.
out.
An armed strike.
All right, Zephyr, does that hit?
Yes.
All right.
That'll be-
Do you have any special damage for
Nah.
unarmed attack, or is it
It's
just
a-
default?
Default
It's
5.
a default.
Okay. What'd you say, Austin? Sorry.
It's a default damage.
Yeah. So I believe that's 1
No,
bludgeoning,
he
or
has
well,
5
what's your?
because it's strength.
Okay.
Alright.
So, as you see Gil just pull back, and there's not really anywhere to dodge unless you want to tumble off the horse, and Gil just decks you in the face for 5 bludgeoning damage.
Should we just keep dealing blows?
Lucian, as you're riding next to Gil, you see Zephyr with one hand on a dagger planted into Gil's bleeding stomach, and Gil pulling back as Zephyr now has a pretty wicked looking black eye.
Okay, so does Zephyr seem like he's going to still put up a fight?
Zephyr.
I guess.
Considering that was like a third of your health, like
If you're going to do that, I'm going to attack you.
I mean, well, your decision won't affect mine. I'm just trying to think.
I can do it. I can.
I know you could do
cast.
inflict wounds and all that. I'd be dead.
No, I can. No, I can do Sacred Flame, and you'll be at least.
No, I'll be dead.
No, you won't. I won't let you die.
Are you sure about that?
well, if she has to do twice your health in general,
Yeah.
for it to be automatic death.
Well, it has to be whatever health you have left, and then your health.
I can do Sacred Flame, and if I roll an 8, you'll be at 0. You'll be past 0.
Actually,
and then
I'd be at 1 if you did 8.
Yeah.
I'm at 9
so
HP, so.
Yeah, but then I can do Spare the Dying, and you'll just be, at 0. So
Zephyr, what do you want to do?
Are you going to attack Gil?
Again.
No. I had this idea already. I'm trying to figure out how your Sacred Flame thing works. Oh, that. So, you wouldn't be able to knock me out with that, so. Anyways, but, Gil seeing obviously fighting, or Zephyr obviously seeing fighting Gil is not going to help anything. This is probably not going to be any better. Can I shoot a crossbow at Lucian?
You can try.
What?
You have to be able to get the crossbow first.
I mean, you're holding me. You're riding the.
Technically speaking, you are pretty much in combat at this point, and you can't actually stop him from pulling it out in combat unless you had already prepared that as a thing.
Yeah, unless you and also you're riding a horse as well.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to shoot her. How far away?
You are going to have disadvantage because you are going to have disadvantage because Gil is next to you, and you're on a horse. But
well,
murder you.
All right, click that. That's. I mean, either way, even without disadvantage, I don't hit. So.
Okay, Zephyr, you pull your. Is it a hand crossbow or a light crossbow?
The light crossbow.
All right. You just kind of spitefully pull your dagger free from Gil's stomach and sheath it before quickly switching to your crossbow. And you take a brief second before Gil can, between controlling the horse, get a swing at you, pull the trigger. But Lucian, the crossbow bolt sails wide between Zephyr, wriggling constantly, and the movements of the horse.
She's going to extend her hand and look at him very coldly and cast Guiding Bolt.
All right.
All right. So this is where Zephyr dies. All right. I'm waiting for that death.
Does an 11 hit?
Zephyr?
11? Actually, no. It doesn't. Ooh.
All right.
I live.
Lucian, you're not much more used to mounted combat than Zephyr is, and your guiding bolt sails over both of their heads, and you just feel Pietro burying his face into your back, trying really hard not to watch what's going on. And you can hear him yelling, but it's hard to make out over your own sheer focus on what's happening and the sounds of the magic and combat. This whole situation's a mess.
Yeah.
Gil, you have the chance to do something.
So, at this point, I'm going to rage. Take it out.
Rage!
And I'm going to use Form of the Beast.
You're gonna turn into a beast on top of a horse. You're gonna turn into a beast on a beast.
No, the only thing that changes is my head.
Okay.
It doesn't actually turn me into a beast. It gives me beast-like qualities.
Okay.
And I'm going to bite Zephyr.
Go for it.
Well, no, not just your head, your whole body. I think it's your whole body, yeah. Because
your whole body.
Because you also get weapons. You get claws, tails, and a bite.
Yeah, your whole body changes, honey.
You're turning into a beast.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
positive
because you
I
also
did
have
that.
claws
Yeah,
and a tail.
you can still you can still rage and then get rage damage.
Just be a beast on top of a beast.
Okay, then I guess I will wait on that. I was wanting to bring that out soon, but I guess it'll wait. And I'll just instead.
Punch him again.
Punching me.
No, punching him won't put him at 0.
Yes, it will.
No, it won't.
No, because he still has 9 health.
I have 9 HP, so he has to punch me twice.
Stop metagaming. Punch him or not to punch him? That is the question.
I want to use a dagger on him.
All right. So you unsheath your remaining dagger that had not been used as a lockpick.
Yeah.
This is a mess.
Now
This is a hot mess. is what
may
it
or may
is.
not kill me.
No,
Most
that's
times.
7.
Ooh, a natural one.
We got lucky.
He got a natural one.
Let me guess, I dropped my knife.
I mean, it's an at one. Zephyr, as Gil unsheaths the knife, you've been trained by the best bandits in Yav. Your ears twitch at the sound of unsheathing metal, and Gil, as you're bringing it down towards him, Zephyr turns around and elbows, like just in that forearm space between the elbow and your wrist, and your wrist or your hand, and just kind of reflexively from that hit opens, and your dagger tumbles into the grass and is quickly left in the quite literal dust as your horse continues.
That was my favorite dagger.
Zephyr, stop where you are. Stop trying to fight us, and we'll take you to your family.
Oh, and what reason would you have to do that?
I have a thing or two to say to your father.
And then Gil will quite literally whisper in Zephyr's ear and say,
What?
You cut out one more time.
I heard
I was
summer.
going to say, his reason for taking Zephyr back is summer.
Oh. And hearing this, Zephyr puts a grin on his face and he's like, alright. I would like to see how this will play out. He gives a little chuckle and then he just sits back.
So, as promised, we will head back to. I don't have my notes.
Well, I was going to say, we should probably take some form of a rest, considering it's already night.
Yeah, that's true. I just want to put a lot of distance between us and the battalion.
I mean, as long as you make sure our tracks aren't able to be found, we should be fine.
Well, I have no way of doing that.
Yeah, so we'll go on for about another 10-15 minutes.
All right. So, are you heading back towards Tibadran territory?
Yeah.
Okay. The caravan had only just entered the Tieshan Valley and had not gotten too. You can still see the Sprintwood in the distance. The caravan had been almost backtracking the way you had come, but was about to start making a turn. So you basically can just follow the route you had previously taken to get back towards, although you will still, unless you want to take the long way, have to go through Fuse again, where Q and his bandits are.
No, we're not going through Fuse.
All right, so you're planning to take the long way?
Yep.
All right. Okay, so Zephyr and Lucian, any objections to this plan?
No.
I mean,
as long as we're keeping my promise, I'm good.
Well, Zephyr is coming along for the ride.
Well, yeah, for now, but
I have a thing or two to say to the family.
well, I mean, I don't know why we're taking the wrong route, but it's up to y'all. Y'all can just waste time by me.
Well, because we don't have anything to trade except for your life.
We have you to trade.
When we find the bandits again.
Is that the bandits that are?
I'm like 100% sure if we tell your little bandit family that we are here to deliver you to your family, they will let us deliver you and they will also let us go. If you don't want to be with us, I'm not going to make you.
Well, again, it's up to y'all to take the long route. I personally don't see the reason, but
I don't either. I say we go through. I'm not scared of Q. He doesn't scare me. You can juggle all you want, little Zephyr. But I'm still going to tell them that we're delivering you to your family.
I mean, how y'all do it is up to y'all. Again, I'm just along for the ride.
You are lucky that I do not stop these horses and punch your face myself.
Yeah, I got him pretty good. You can get him next time. And we can go the other way then. I still think we need to rest.
How far are we from to Badra?
Once you hit the Sprintwood, which you can if you just continue for like a couple hours, you'll be. It'll be about a 2-day trip through the Sprintwood, going through Fuse, which is towards the edge of the Sprintwood, and then getting to the capital of Rosewick, which is deeper in.
So I'd say once we get to the trees, we rest.
I can agree with that.
Okay.
So sorry, Zephyr, I don't quite trust you.
We could tie him up.
Tie me up.
We could literally tie him up, like tie him to a tree.
We have to take all his little knives away.
I don't care. Do it.
Oh, is Lucian scared of me?
Not scared. Or like I'm not stupid.
Like I said,
some fears just mean that you're not stupid. Like I'm scared of juggling chainsaws.
I mean, well, see, if I wanted to fight you, and I would have still fight you, but I'm
if
interested.
you want to fight me.
Well,
I
like
will
I said,
beat you.
Again, if you would let me finish, I want to see how this plays out. It sounds like it'd be a good comedy.
Just gonna roll her eyes.
Okay, do we have your word? Do you wanna escape?
Or try to like attack us when we're sleeping. Because I was going to be a little lizard person. That's what I would do.
Attack you while you sleep? Well, it has crossed my mind, but I see no purpose into it. I gain nothing from it, so if I was going to choose between attacking you and escaping, I would escape. But like I said, I'm willing to tag along.
Only because we're going to return you to your family.
No. But like I said, I'm willing to tag along.
This really isn't very assuring.
No.
Alright. Temporarily. So
Yeah. We're gonna
Take a
we're
long
gonna
rest.
get that.
Okay. Okay. Temporarily
set shifts.
Okay. Temporarily setting aside the inter-party conflict, you guys begin making haste away from the barbarous caravan towards the Sprintwood that you had just been carted through. Once you hit the relative safety and, more importantly, camouflage of the tree line of the Sprintwood, you guys find a relatively safe alcove to set up camp. So if you guys are keeping watch, what's the order for it?
I take first watch.
Okay.
And then I'll take second.
Okay. Who's taking third?
Zephyr doesn't get a chance.
Nope.
We're dividing into 2 watches.
Yeah, since
Okay.
they only need 4 hours of sleep.
Okay.
We're elves. We only need 4 hours of sleep.
That is fair. Yeah, good. That's some good strategy. I like that. Okay. Both of you make me perception checks, please.
While they do that, I'm gonna point out your guiding bolt could have killed me, like one shot me.
She's gonna look at them and say, "I know." And
I
also
know.
natural 20.
All right.
Well, no, I was in character. I was more or less out of character. Just like,
He was just out of character for
Okay,
that.
you
well,
could have killed me.
Looking at you through my screen, I know.
God. I think this is the first time I've ever DM'd such violent inter-party conflict. Normally, you guys just argue and then continue forward. All right. So, I believe, was it Gil taking first watch?
Yes.
Gil, as you settle down for your watch, making sure to keep a sharp eye on Zephyr.
And the
You
wood.
watch.
On Zephyr.
You watch.
But on Zephyr, yeah.
Yeah. You watch the trees, and you do see the very occasional movement. You can't quite make out specifics at a glance, but you do see that there is some activity in the trees.
When I see this, can I tell if, like, are these dressed up as the barbarous knights? Or does it seem more thief-like?
Just at a glance with your perception, you can see that there's some movement, but you can't tell anything else. Like, it could be an animal, could be people from anywhere. Like, you can't tell immediately. You just see that there is some movement in the surrounding tree line.
So, I'm going, like, do I have anything that's white?
Well, I mean, that'd be
White?
more. I guess that'd be.
Specific.
I'm guessing for a white flag.
Yeah.
Just
Just to call it, like, a truce to whoever's in there. It's for a meeting.
Okay. I don't know if you have anything white on your person.
If not, Gil will loud enough for them to hear.
We are not enemies.
I know you're there. What do you want?
But how loud are you doing this?
Well, you and Lucian are asleep.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying if you're doing it loud enough, I was like, do we just wake up from his yelling?
Oh no.
Lucian is in a trance.
I'm not yelling. I'm just
saying it loud
enough.
Speaking casually, basically.
Yes.
All right. I'll say the rest of you can make perception checks if you want to see if you hear him and wake up. But if not, Gil, when you say that, you see the movement stop, but there is no response or reply.
Okay. Just be on your way then.
Okay. The rest of your watch passes without incident. Lucian, as Gil wakes you up to take the next watch.
I will tell her about the people in the woods, or at least what I assume to be.
All right. And Lucian, sure enough, as you haven't even sat down yet to begin your watch, you see basically as Gil is turning away and settling down the movement, there's some very rapid movement in the tree line, but it seems to be heading away from the campsite now.
Lucian's just gonna watch it and just keep an eye on it, really not say anything, not do anything, just be very still.
All right. As the deep night passes over your watch, you see no further intrusion from the trees. You see no sign of the caravan. And near you, you see the sleeping figure of Pietro. You see his hair is frazzled and has some twigs and leaves in it. And he's generally seems to be sleeping rather fitfully, kind of tossing and turning a bit and kind of groaning a bit in his sleep.
Lucian is going to wake him up nicely and try to get all the twigs and stuff out of his hair. Offer him a piece of fruit.
As you wake him up, he kind of shakes, like jolts violently, and looks around.
It's alright,
And-
it's alright, it's just me.
And he relaxes a bit, and you gently start to work the mess off of him. And you see him, you can feel him just kind of almost like less shaking and more just kind of subtly almost vibrating beneath your grip. Like it's less like a very obvious scared shiver and more like the perpetual just of something like a chihuahua. But he does seem to relax, albeit very slowly, and as if he's ready to like spring into action at any moment. Settle into your grip.
Just be a good boy and eat your apple.
He nods and grabs a very heavily ripened apple from his rations and gently bites down on it. Is there anything else you'd like to do before your watch ends?
Just ruffle his hair and smile down at him and just reassure him that everything's going to be okay.
Okay. After finishing his midnight snack, he slowly settles back into a slightly more peaceful sleep, although you can still see a perpetual kind of furrowed brow and frown as he falls into a deep sleep.
Lucian will pet his hair.
You see the frown stays, but the kind of furrowing of his brow loosens ever so slightly. Your watch passes without incident, and the party awakes. What would you guys like to do?
Okay. Well, let's get everybody on the horses and make sure that the horses get something to eat. I mean, there's grass and stuff it can eat.
Yeah, they've just been kind of grazing through the night.
All right, you ready, Gil?
Yep.
All right. Lucian's not even going to bother with Zephyr.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, very nice cold shoulder to Zephyr there. It's okay, you guys will be best friends by the final boss, I'm sure of it. I'm just like panicking and going through my notes.
Distance.
I once again pick up Zephyr.
Pick me up.
He goes in front of me on the horse.
Zephyr, do you resist?
No, I guess
All right.
I want to see how this plays out.
Lucian will offer to pick up Pie.
Pietro nods, having already just kind of been used to being carted around. All right, and you guys want to continue through where you now know the city of Fuse is?
Yeah, but I'm not gonna do it as an idiot. I want to just like go along the edge of the city, just barely skirting it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like not going through the middle of it like we did last time.
Mm-hmm. All right. You guys travel, slightly slowed down by the tree lines. Zephyr, you recognize the route you're taking as the outer rim of the city of the tree, sort of built into the tree city of Fuse. And as you guys pass, it's easy enough to spot as they're not particularly like hiding per se. You can see bandits in full ghillie suit and camouflage paint leaning against the trees watching you pass, and you can see one of the bandits, one you don't recognize, just kind of rubbing his fingers against the bladed tip of a shiv as he watches you guys pass through the trees. None of them say anything, but you can just see bandits like watching you pass through their forested city. And if you had to guess from their posture, almost as if they're debating whether it's worth it to try and like highway your ass.
I'm gonna wave.
The one with the shiv kind of gives a small, like, dismissive flick of the shiv to kind of acknowledge your greeting.
I'm gonna, as we pass through, say, "So cute." I said hi.
You see him kind of smirk a bit and said, "He was hoping to greet you himself."
Oh, what a shame.
Let's keep going.
Yeah,
Don't get sidetracked, Gil.
I didn't stop. We're still going.
And Zephyr, as you pass, you see the bandit kind of give you a smile and a wave.
And I do nothing. I'm along for the ride.
Mm-hmm. All right. You guys pass under the watchful eye of the Tebadrons around the outer rim of the city of Fuse. Not quite out of the city, but close enough to the more uncontrolled parts of the forest should an emergency arise. And while the bandits observe you, no trouble seems to arise. And eventually you work your way around back to the route you had taken, and there's nothing but, generally, other than like hunters, unclaimed sprintwood between you and the capital. Do you want to stop for another rest before reaching the city of Rosewick?
How much longer is it?
If you take a rest here, you will arrive about early afternoon tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay, then yes.
All right.
And then
You
we'll
got-
take the same watch list.
All right, perception checks.
Yeah. Zephyr will just pass out. Alright, fine.
Night, y'all. I get rest. Okay. And I believe, Gil has first watch. Yes. Unless you guys want to switch it.
No, same shift.
Yeah, same shift.
Gil, as you settle in for the first watch, nothing of particular note happens. You do see the occasional Tebadron wander close to the camp, but not really aggressive. This is the area where they're free to just kind of roam and travel between cities, so they don't really give you much trouble, just kind of acknowledge your camp and move on. However, what does catch your attention is the figure of Q, who just kind of leans against a tree, not even really trying too hard to hide himself. And once he seems convinced he has your attention, just kind of gives you a smirk and a nod.
And I'll nod back. And quietly say, "Nice to see you."
He gives a kind of the 2-finger casual salute, like almost tipping the hat that he doesn't wear. And he kind of gives a wave, and several of the bushes and small shrubs around you retract into the surrounding forest.
You must teach me that trick.
He smiles and shrugs and nods to Zephyr, asleep in your camp, and smiles as he retreats back towards the city of Fuse.
I won't do anything. I'll just continue to sit there. Though I will be inspecting some of these shrubs a little bit more closely.
The surrounding shrubs do not appear to be bandits at this point. The rest of your watch passes without incident. You trade off with Lucian. Anything for the trade-off?
I saw our friend Q.
I suppose he didn't give you any trouble.
Nah, We were surrounded for a minute, but it got too scared.
You know.
Don't you think that's a little, weird that they're not attacking?
No, we got their prints.
Fair.
Plus, they know where we're going, and we're in their territory. If they want to take us, they know where to find us.
Okay. Lucian's just gonna sit cross and just watch the tree line.
Your watch passes without incident. Eventually, the sun rises, and the party awakes, ready to head towards the Tibadran capital now. Anything notable before you guys arrive there?
Nothing that I can think of.
I shoot both of them now. I'm joking. No.
I don't do anything.
Yeah, no, I don't got anything. So, we just have this silent drive.
I mean, to be fair, things are pretty awkward at this point. Making casual conversation would be kind of weird. Yeah, so the route now familiar to you after going this way 4 times now. You exit the at least interior tree line of sorts of the Sprintwood, and see the, especially to you, Zephyr, familiar protective walls surrounding the fortified bandit city of Rosewick. You guys make your way around to the gate that you had approached the first time, and you see the very same and very confused looking archers looking down as you approach.
Lucian's gonna look up at them and smile. Please, let us in and let us return
Did you
him
miss
to his
us?
family.
They both kind of look at each other and they seem like just totally baffled. And Zephyr, you see the one who you had spoken to about returning the party's weapons looks to you and kind of like glances at the others and kind of shakes his head like, what do I do here?
You let us in so we can see the king. Yes?
Zephyr, do you do anything? Because he's looking at you.
I guess Zephyr just sort of waves his hand like, just let us through.
The guy kind of, without taking his eyes off you, kind of leans over and says, open the gate and, you know the drill, weapons, all that. And
Not this time. Sorry.
We have learned to be a little bit more cautious with you and your folk. Forgive us for this.
I don't think I'm supposed to let you go talk to the king loaded up with broadswords and the like.
Look, if we wanted to kill Zephyr, we could have. Let us in. We don't want any trouble.
And we both know the king is not as frail and old as he seems. Wouldn't you agree?
And the archer looks to you again, Zephyr.
Well, I was going to say, this is pretty dangerous ground for him because if he disagrees, that's treason.
What? What do you mean it's treason?
If he says that the king is old and frail,
No, I'm not saying he's looking towards me about the weapon, not the whole.
Yeah. And I will point out that is part of the reason he didn't give you an answer.
He's just gonna give a sigh and be like, against my better judgment, I do think that we should just let them in with their weapons. I'm gonna give a little chuckle and be like, well, even with their weapons, they wouldn't be able to do much, so it would be no threat.
The archer visibly relaxes significantly and kind of gives a nod and says, all right, open the gates, but we'll still be providing you an escort as normal, protocol and all.
That's fine.
That is fine.
All right. The gates are opened, and the two guards flank you as more guards arrive with bows at the ready to take their place on the gates. And they begin to escort you towards the Tebadron castle. Is there anything you'd like to do between now and getting to see if Zephyr's father is present?
I'll just hold Pi close and whisper in his ear, "You just stay close to me and
And
try to be quiet."
he nods without saying anything, just rapidly nods, and you can see him kind of looking around at the just intimidating and sleazy looking figures that populate this city.
And then I would like to, as we're passing through, I would like to look around. Do they look like they're gearing up for anything, or do they look different from last time?
Make me an insight check.
I had to focus there. You sound very distant from your mic.
Yeah, you sound really far away for
Yeah,
some
it's
reason.
like you sound very distant from your mic. So I'd like focus on what you're saying.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, like the city, like a lot of activity coming and going, but so you can't really tell if they're gearing up for anything. But all seems the closest you can connect to normal in the city.
He'll shrug.
All right. You guys are taken to the very elaborate and well-made castle, escorted through the various halls, and finally led to the throne room. After a moment, the guard who had spoken to you kind of gives a very uncomfortable looking clearing of the throat and nod before knocking on the door. And Zephyr, you hear the voice of your father. Enter! The guards push the door open, and you guys are allowed to enter as you see King and Queen Tebadra at their thrones.
Remember us?
Lucian would like to put Zephyr between her and Gil, and Pi on her other side.
What?
Okay.
As close as she can.
Force me in between y'all.
Yes.
Okay. Zephyr, anything you want to do about that?
So you're trying to hold me hostage, huh?
No, we're not putting you. We're not holding you. I'm just saying
Okay,
I'm moving
there's
around. So
no
you're.
Yeah, so you're not being held. You're basically just giving like a kind of marching order. Is that okay with you?
That's fine, whatever.
Like,
Okay.
I'm not even going to have my hand on any weapons. Like, I'm not looking or acting aggressive in any form or fashion.
All right. The king, for all his part, raises an eyebrow and looks to the guards and kind of gives a wave of the hand, and they give a bow before exiting the room. And as the throne door closes behind you, you are all left alone with the Tebadron royalty. The king smiles and holds out his many bejeweled hand in a position expecting the party to kiss them.
Lucian's gonna
time-
laugh.
No.
Zephyr
You
Yeah,
think
does.
so-
that really is going to work
time-
after what you did?
All right. And Zephyr, what were you saying?
Zephyr goes to kiss the hand.
As you approach, he allows you to kiss the ring, but then just kind of chuckles and tousles your head. Hey, Zephyr.
Hey.
And he leans back and takes a deep breath to kind of settle himself before smiling. And he just kind of pats the arm of the throne for you to sit on, Zephyr, if you wish.
While tempting that may be, I would like to stand and see how this plays out.
The king gives a shrug and kind of a dismissive way of just like, yeah, fair enough, and leans back as he beholds the remaining 3 party members. I must say, it's a bold move, to say the least, coming to the king's throne room completely armed to the teeth. I'll have to thank my guards for that. And refusing to pay me the respect nobility deserves. And you see his fingernails kind of scraping a bit into the stone of the throne.
Yes.
Well,
last time we gave you that
I'm sorry. Do you want to go first? Because like Lucy.
Yeah, one at a time, please.
Yeah, I was gonna say, last time we gave you that respect, you kept us here, betrayed us, and then, well, pretty much sold us. So you no longer have that. How do I put this? Respect for your station. If
If
I
it
may
makes
be so blunt.
if it makes you feel better, I didn't sell you. I got no money for my part of that deal.
You didn't even get your own son from your deal.
He's here, isn't he?
Only because she's gonna look very hard at him.
And what did you say? Sorry.
I said she's gonna give him a hard look and say, only because we allowed it.
He smiles, and you can see the sharp, gnomish teeth, and you can see the queen kind of shuffling in place and kind of scowling as he kind of taps his fingers on the side of the throne nearest to Zephyr and says, you know, it's funny. I'm starting to get really tired of people coming into my land and telling me what am or am not allowed to do or to think or who I can or can't kidnap or steal from. You're in my house.
Yeah.
Yes,
And we
we're
had
here.
fun.
Do you?
More or less.
Well,
I mean, he's free to go. He's not. I'm not gonna say he's a prisoner. I'm just saying we give you him, we leave, and everybody's happy.
though, after the fact that we managed to escape from your so-called allies, might I inquire that you reconsider our original meaningful purpose of being here?
And Zephyr.
Allies are not as great as they sound.
He raises an eyebrow and says, my allies are capable of threatening me and taking one of my belongings from me on my land in front of my face. And the way I see it, if I really, really wanted it enough and I get the things I want, I find I could make short work of you, your allies, and the whole alliance if I saw fit.
Precisely, which would make it all the more reasonable for you to join us.
Lucian's gonna raise a hand and
It
shrug.
just seems more profitable.
Listen, Gil, it's not worth it. Like I said, she's gonna look at the king in his eyes. This is the only thing that I'm going to say. Zephyr can come home. I leave. Pietro leaves. And Gil leaves. You do not interrupt our leaving. Your friends and family do not interrupt our leaving.
You see him kind of click his tongue a bit, as if he was really hoping he could catch you with that loophole. But he's like smiling, like he's actually kind of proud of how clever you are.
And we can leave. No hiccups.
He smiles
He
and
can stay. And she's going to point at Zephyr.
I can stay. I'm already here.
Yeah, you're here, but you can stay. I don't want him with us. You get your son, we get to leave. It seemed like a pretty fair trade to me. We brought him here, didn't we?
By force.
Zephyr, your father looks to you and kind of nods as if he also is kind of in on what you're putting down, so to speak. and turns back to the other two, placing both hands over the handle of his cane, and kind of tilts his head side to side a bit and says, I suppose that's fair, but
I would also like to mention, did you know that if we had not escaped, your son included, were going to be experiments for this
Dr. Knight, correct?
Yes.
The Tebadron King smiles and tilts his head side to side and says, I may find myself very unfortunately, and you can see beneath his boots his toes curl violently, bottom of the new food chain, but I still have my eyes and ears. He glances at all of you and says, experiments to Miss Knight, the Oathbreaker, to get something hopefully useful out of you. Or into you, I suppose.
Lucian's just gonna sigh heavily and look and side glance at Gil, and then look back at the king. Like
So
I
can
said,
we go or not?
Zephyr is here. We didn't have to bring him here, but we did.
True. I could have came
My
here by
request.
myself.
She's gonna say this in a very like pointed way. My request remains the same. I leave, Pietro leaves, and Gil leaves. Nobody, friends, family, or otherwise, will stop us, hurt us, or anything.
The king stares at you and slowly stands up, not getting off his throne, just standing on the seat of the throne, not making much of a difference in his half gnomish height, and kind of glares at you. And he snaps his fingers. Zephyr, you recognizing that as the just kind of go-to like family pay attention gesture from the man. And he says, my son, what was it I said just not a minute ago that I hate happening?
Oh, no, I wasn't telling you what to do. I was requesting it, Your Highness.
That's what I thought. And he slowly sits back down, and kind of swings side to side a little bit, and finally looks at the two of you, and you see as he almost from nowhere pulls a gold coin from his sleeve and starts to walk it along his fingers, occasionally flipping it, appearing very deep in thought as he speaks. Well, I would like my position in our bargain of sorts. I would like my position noted to be absolutely one of power. You see, your charity in returning my beloved son to me, and he flips the coin, stops to kind of pet your head, Zephyr, and then catches it on the way down, has already been done. You can't take it back as part of a negotiation, and your charity without forethought isn't my problem. But I don't necessarily have a problem with you leaving and letting my belongings stay with me. And you have nothing on you that I can't mass produce at this point, as far as I'm aware. Zephyr?
Not really, especially since one has lost and broken their daggers.
Oh, that's a shame.
It happens.
He looks over all of you very contemplatively and kind of leans, almost slouches, to look at you, Zephyr, and says, how did you get away? You weren't gone for, what, but 3 days?
Masterfully.
What?
What'd you say, sorry?
I said masterfully.
That's cute. Zephyr?
In all honesty, they made a
She's gonna look at the king. Well, I almost made him drown.
oh
The king smiles and he kind of nods to you, Zephyr, kind of silently saying you can continue if you wish.
They made a obviously reckless attempt to escape, and as what she said is some true. Um, she she made the king cough in water, but the king decided to let us go in the end.
Any particular reason?
We were a little bit more than they had originally thought. Plus, they were not allowed to kill us.
There it
Yeah,
is.
that is simply what the situation. They could have killed us at any moment. They just
They could
couldn't.
have. But use what you have, right?
Yes.
The king nods. Oh, that's absolutely fair, but as long as we're under this roof, on this land, I'm the smartest person and the strongest person in the room. So I'll not have false claims of power over the barbarous governor.
Oh, there's no false claims here.
Not
Very,
We
Make him
didn't
drown.
kill him.
very funny. And he walks the medallion along his fingers one last time before snagging it. And as he opens his palm, the coin is gone. And he taps his fingers to his chin in thought and says, "What would I have to offer the two of you? Zephy, my boy, I already know what you would like, but what do I need to offer for a job? Some mercenary work."
And this one's gonna cross our arms.
What would you have us do? And then we'll give you a price.
He smiles and is Lucine going to say anything or just crossing their
No,
arms?
she's
Okay.
just gonna cross our arms.
The king hops off his throne and hobbling along on his cane, kind of just walks like a circle around you two, kind of looking you up and down. And after a moment, kind of tilts his head to the side as he's kind of hobbling along and says, "As I said, I find myself now at the bottom of a very intimidating food chain. And the way I see it, my boy and the two of you are some of the first to prove that the predators on top don't necessarily always get their meal." And he kind of licks his lips a bit and kind of eyes all of you up and down. And I would not be a proper scavenger if I didn't decide to make full use of the materials that have been presented to me. He pulls a envelope from the inside of his coat. This letter, and a few others I have in my personal study, have as much information as I can personally offer about the new predators in town, those who have established the new food chain, and some very interesting information concerning all of you. I didn't just decide to select you randomly, you know. Although, believe me, I am not above that. And he starts to hobble back towards his throne. I can offer you some ammunition of sorts against Barbarous, their allies, and those that I unfortunately find myself in the service of. And all I want in exchange is for the three of you to carve a path of destruction so that I may feast in your wake.
How do you mean?
He tilts his head side to side. Regarding what, my lady?
What kind of destruction are you asking?
Are
We
you
have to
asking
be
us to
smart
tear?
about this.
Are you asking us to tear down things?
Tear a few things down, assassinate a few leaders. Obviously, the initial rewards are yours to keep, and I'll simply collect anything that's left behind. I don't seek
Well-
profit from this venture. And you see him look at Zephyr and the queen, his beloved wife, and finally kind of taps his foot. I want my freedom.
Well, and should we succeed in this, you will gain some considerable power. So you do have stuff to gain from this.
He shrugs and tilts his head. I suppose that's fair, but do you really think an army of bandits can hold that much against the onslaught of the other Yavik continents?
I think you'd be surprised what Army of Bandits can do.
He shrugs. Well, you got me there.
Which is why we originally came here asking you a question. Do you remember this question?
He smiles and plops down in his throne. I do.
So, here is what I propose. Instead of making, you say this path of destruction, you use what you have. You say you are a scavenger and you use what you have at your disposal. Look at what you have at your disposal. You have a lot of strong men and women and people at your disposal. So why don't you use them, your family, your beloved family, and strike up against these predators with other people? That way, not only do you get the satisfaction of it happening, you get the satisfaction of doing it yourself
And your freedom.
and your own freedom.
You see the Tibadran king kind of kick his feet a little bit, and he says, "Believe me, I've considered it, but these aren't the kind of people that you just raise an army against and numbers and weapons and tactics, and that's the end of it. These people have so much," and you see him almost kind of drool, "in their pockets, so much at their fingertips. Your puny little alliance will mean absolutely nothing to them, even with my full backing, I promise you."
Well, how about this? Should we start to win?
You will
Would
have my
you
allegiance
really
without
join?
question.
That's all I ask.
Should we
He
start
smiles.
to win?
Nobody likes to be on the losing side.
He smiles and nods. Now you're speaking my language. And he pulls another envelope from his coat and flicks this one at Pietro, and it kind of like beams him in the head slightly, but he kind of fumbles and catches it. Tell the president that she may have my allegiance if the alliance can prove themselves. Believe me, the higher-ups know not to trust me with anything damning, and for this exact reason. But should you prove that you're capable of bringing them down, then who knows? Bandits and other Yavik kingdoms may be fighting side by side again.
I would like to see this.
He smiles and leans forward, and you see him kind of eyeing you up and down. As would I. Zephyr?
Yes.
He kind of looks you up and down now in that just purely cold, analytical way he does, and says, as much as neither party may favor it, I think it would be best if you go along with them. The queen, and he kind of pats the queen's arm, and she places a hand over his, is no longer in her prime, I'm sorry to say, and while she can definitely carve a path of destruction, and you see the queen just smile broadly, I don't think she'd be best suited for a job like this, and you're one of my most talented children for something like this. And you know how deep my pockets are, boy.
I was going to say, Summer seemed pretty talented as well.
She is, but she's a chemist, not a fighter.
It tend to go hand in hand. Keep an eye on her.
He smiles and tilts his head. I suppose that's fair. Dr. Knight is proof enough of that. But I still need her here. My health, believe it or not, is actually failing. That wasn't just a ruse to let your guard down. I mean, he chuckles and gestures. In my old age, here I am forgetting that sleep powder would have done nothing to elves.
Everybody makes a mistake every now and then. All you can do is learn.
He shrugs, or have people do the learning for you. And he leans back and crosses his legs on the throne. Do we have a deal?
We do.
He smiles and folds the other envelope over in his
Poor
hand.
Lucian agrees. She is going to take a quick look at the envelope and then look at the king very sharply.
Okay. The envelope in his hand, or
Yeah, the envelope that Pietra has.
that Pietro has.
Yeah.
Pietro has already opened it, and it seems to just be a letter.
And then she will give her wicked salute to him.
He smiles and responds with the Tebadran salute and turns to Zephyr. How about you? Up for some action?
That I am not sure.
He runs the coin along his fingers again, and you kind of glance like, where did that come from? And looks you in the eye, kind of occasionally glancing up and down before continuing to look you in the eye, and says, you've seen how deep my pockets are. Would you believe that out there, there's a vault of more gold than all the kingdoms have combined? And that's yours, son, if you do this job for me.
Well, he's sold.
So Zephyr, do you just kind of initially seem convinced?
Thinking. He's just sort of thinking this over, like, I guess, against my better judgment, I will do the job. So, I'm gonna look at the party and be like, I don't think the judgment goes both ways.
I have nothing against you, Zephyr.
Speak for yourself.
Pietro's just kind of looking at his feet.
Business is business.
Indeed it is. And, Zephyr, if it ensures at least cooperation from your end, he looks to the two of you and says, the information will be funneled on an as-needed basis. I don't need you destroying my things while you're out doing this job for me. And Zephy, my boy, he puts a hand over your shoulder and leans in. And if to you guys, it looks like kind of like a like one-armed, like, side hug, father to son. But Zephyr, he whispers in your ear, I know where your parents are. And that's where we're going to end tonight's session.
Pterodactyl screeching.
Yeah, that's.
So, the party has formed a hesitant alliance with the bandit kingdom that had just sold them out 3 days ago, but with the promise that they shall bring down the bandit kingdom's unwelcome benefactors, and in exchange, the bandits shall reap the rewards, and should the party prove that they're capable, join the burgeoning alliance started by the Shadow Lily Confederation that may, just may, turn the tides in their favor. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you guys so much for playing, and we'll see you next week.